Imagine you're about to watch somebody do a backflip. They've announced that they're going to do a backflip, so you're prepared to watch said person do backflip. And so when they get into the crouched position to do the backflip jump thing, they jump and then a giant gust of wind carries them off and lands them somewhere, and you don't even get to know if they even landed the backflip because you don't see what happens. That's how I feel about Jurassic World Rebirth. And quick disclaimer here, I am going to be giving some spoiler stuff because it's inspired a new series that I'm going to start that's called Setups That Effed Off. Real quick, because I'm looking to the side camera here, I'm not really good at editing yet and like creating graphics and stuff like that, so I really want you to imagine that all of a sudden when I said setups that effed off, there's just like this giant really cool explosion and like this deep guttural voice that's just like, setups that effed off! Oh yeah! And by the way, this video is probably going to get a little unhinged. Anyways, but before we get started, I just want to say thank you for being here as always, and I really appreciate the time that you spend and listening to me goblin rant about random things on the internet. But seriously, I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. There is a lot that this movie set up that just didn't pay off. Like, you know, the mutated dinosaurs, the fact that people lost interest in dinosaurs in general, the whole like curing heart disease thing that was really weird and just like didn't have us like solve it. Okay. Collect myself. I'm going to be focusing on two characters, Zora and Duncan. And the reason why I want to focus on those two characters is because they gave them really compelling, interesting backstories, even though they were like maybe like 2-minute scenes to explain the things that they just didn't do anything with. And it would have been so easy to do something with them to make a better and more compelling like movie. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the movie. Like, it turned my brain off, and I was like, dinosaurs, wow, it's really cool. Because, like, I've loved it since I was a wee child. We don't talk about the last movie that came out, though. That movie doesn't exist to me. That one doesn't exist to me. However, this movie focuses generally around the concept and idea that people have lost interest in dinosaurs, but that doesn't go anywhere. And so you get this team led by some guy named Krebs who works for another like genetic company, whatever, and they have to gather like 3 blood samples from the 3 biggest dinosaurs for whatever reason because they have the biggest hearts, and that's gonna help people cure heart disease. I guess. Never mind the fact that like if like you know these companies had access to all of this information like genetically like all the files and things like that, I feel like there'd be an easier way to get that information than just going out in the wild and finding them. I would love to tell you that collecting those DNA samples led to like some really compelling like choices and things like that in the movie, but honestly, they just didn't. They were just vehicles to smash 2 groups of people together, which I'll explain in a minute, and also kill everybody who isn't on the poster. And for a second, if you think that they're going to do anything with the D-Rex, I gotta let you know right now, the D-Rex is the bread in the middle of this, like, crap sandwich. Like, you see him in the beginning for probably one of the best intros that I've seen in the series, minus the first one, and you see him at the end. And he just kind of like lumbers around. Essentially, there are 2 groups in this movie, and I feel like that's kind of been a trend that Jurassic Park does, where they have like the main scientist or mercenary group, and then they have like the family-oriented, like, heart of the story group. It's the same thing in this movie. We have the mercenary group, which is basically the people who are working with Kreb in order to obtain all of these things, like the dinosaur blood samples. And then you've got the Delgado family, which was a father, his 2 daughters, and his oldest daughter's boyfriend sailing across the sea for like one last trip before she goes to NYU. I think it's NYU. It goes to college. Just goes to college. One of the things I really like about this movie is that it kind of goes back to basics about dinosaurs being the main thread and all of those things. I get you can make the whole entire argument of like corporate greed and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 which is like rampant throughout all of them. But for the most part, I like the fact that this movie just goes back to dinosaurs being dinosaurs and attacking people because they're in the wrong place. Real quick, I'm going to go over the Delgado family first because they're a smaller unit and they're kind of like a nothing burger, honestly. And I hate saying that because one of the characters in that whole entire family unit is my favorite and of the entire movie, and his name is Xavier. You've got the father, Ruben, his 2 daughters, Isabella and Teresa's boyfriend, Xavier. Real quick side note about Xavier being one of my favorite characters, and the reason why he's one of my favorite characters is because he's the character that has the most development in the entire movie. Like, nobody else has development aside from Ruben. And the only character development Ruben really has is maybe growing to let his daughter be a little bit more independent and like trusting her to do stuff, but also he grows to like Xavier and respect him instead of like loathing and hating him like he did like in the entirety of the movie, which I totally get because Xavier's kind of a bum. However, Xavier is a good character because he is one the comic relief, but also it shows like he's actually mature and grows and is super helpful and saves people. Like chef's kiss, great character. And the biggest thing you need to know about this family is that they are just traveling across the seas to go on this one last family trip, and they run into a mosasaur which capsizes them, and then they make an emergency like broadcast, and that is how they link up with the mercenary group. The mercenary group consists of Zora, Duncan, Krebs, Loomis, Leclerc, like I can't get that out right. Nina and Atwater. The last three, they didn't even make it on the poster, so they're basically the red shirts. They kind of just like they just don't make it. However, I will say, Nina and Leclerc. Why can I not say his name right? Have the two best deaths in the entire movie. Like it's just really great. Loomis, as much as I love the idea of his character, is basically he works in a museum and they use him as the dinosaur expert, and he's kind of this sub in for Alan Grant, but he just doesn't fit in the movie because you're going to an island with mutated dinosaurs, and the knowledge that he has probably wouldn't be super applicable. Plus, he's not knowledgeable of their current environments and the things they're going through. So, you could take him out of the movie for the most part, and you literally wouldn't be missing anything aside from the fact that he suddenly is just like, I want to take all of this data and information and not give it to the company that's paying me to go out here, but actually just disperse it to the entire world, which it sounds good in theory, but what you're just putting it out on the internet, that doesn't mean that people are going to be able to, process it and do stuff like that. And you're just putting it out there for other companies to take over. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense by all accounts. Krebs is I don't want to say bad guy, but they just wrote him in such an unintelligent way that he is forced into that position for whatever reason. Like, honestly, I'm not even sure of his motivations for even being personally there. He's a representative of the company that I can't even remember their name because it's just such a generic name to get all of these DNA samples, and that's really it. There is a point of contention between him and Teresa where Teresa is supposed to call like for an SOS, but he stops her because they're technically in illegal water, and then she like slips while they're being attacked by mosasaur and spinosaurs, and she's like hanging on, and Krebs also fell, and he makes a face that I can only describe as what a face somebody would make at an all-you-can-drink milkshake buffet, and they're lactose intolerant, and they're suffering the ramifications of their choices. Probably like the best choices, honestly, because like milkshakes are delicious. I haven't had one in a long time. But because of that moment, Teresa believes that he intentionally was trying to kill her. But like, dude, there was like a 3-second reaction time for that. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's going to be important later, and I don't want to have to like pause explaining things to have to like really get into that much deeper than it really is, because it's such a nothing moment that got blown into something else. They were trying to make into something else. So the two characters I'm really going to be focusing on are going to be Zora and Duncan. Zora specializes in extractions. Her real motivation for the most part is established. She really only cares about money and a dollar sign, and she is given a moment to explain that at some point on her last mission, she was with her partner, and during a training mission, I guess they said, and he was blown up and died. And she, by her own admittance, has PTSD because of that. And I want you to remember that, because it's going to be important very soon. Duncan, on the other hand, is also a mercenary, and he cares about money as well, and he's the ship owner, and his crew consists of Nina and Leclerc, and Atwater joins them later on. However, they take some time to explain a little bit of Duncan's backstory, where he and his wife ended up getting a divorce because they couldn't cope with the fact that their son had died. And so he carries this big chip on his shoulder and is very, 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 very outspoken about those things until they land on the island. What do you mean he's very outspoken about those things until he lands on the island? Well, you remember how I told you that Reuben and his entire family basically get picked up by Duncan? Well, one of the reasons why he picked them up is because it's an SOS, and that's the right thing you're supposed to do, an emergency signal, but also because he has children. One moment on the boat, they focus really hard on this, is Duncan turning to Reuben and scolding him because he's like, why'd you bring kids out here? Aren't they supposed to be in school? And Reuben's like, dude, It's summer break. They go out of their way to show that he is overly protective of kids and children and really, really, really still wrestles with that like death of his child. And I'm gonna spill the spaghetti right out of my pocket right now. They're not gonna, these motivations are not gonna really matter after they leave the boat. And that sucks. Why does that suck, you might ask? Because in Jurassic Park faction, these two groups were together and then they get split up. But they keep the original integrity of the groups instead of actually mixing and matching the groups together, which would have been way more compelling. Why would it have been way more compelling? Well, if we take a step back and look at the fact that, like, we have, just from Duncan's perspective, you have Duncan, who they've established as somebody who's hyperprotective over children, and you have children. Why did they make the story decision to keep Ruben with his kids instead of switching places and putting Duncan with his kids? Hey, look, talking to the side camera again. Listen, I know that this like video is a little bit all over the place, but honestly, that's kind of how this story is, and I'm trying to breeze through it. I get it. It's a lot to take. I'm like fire hosing this information to you, but I'm assuming that you have already seen this movie. I'm not trying to explain the movie. I'm just trying to show how they set a bunch of stuff up and they just effed off. They just didn't care about it. So I am talking to you as if you have already seen this movie. And if you haven't seen the movie, by all means, go watch it. It's enjoyable to turn your brain off to, but maybe like you have different opinions and I'd put them in the comments below or whatever. Like I would like to know because maybe I'm off. I don't know. Maybe I'm off. The Delgado family and the mercenaries are all on the same boat. They're heading towards the island to like get all the dino DNA and whatever. And the mosasaur finds them and also hunts with spinosaurs and they start attacking the boat. Teresa falls over, like I mentioned earlier. Krebs doesn't have superhuman like a reaction time and is struggling with gas, I guess, and doesn't save her. She falls off. Xavier sees this. He jumps into the water to save her, which is like a really beautiful moment because you're like, oh, this dude kind of sucks. And the dad sees this, and then he jumps off the boat with the daughter, and Zora's like, don't do that. And then they jump off, and Duncan crashes the boat onto the shore. Before the boat is crashed, Atwater gets eaten by a spinosaur, and after it crashes, Nina herself gets eaten by a really cool camouflaged spinosaur, and Zora sees all these things. Keep in mind, she very clearly said that she like has PTSD resulting in people that someone that she has known dying on a mission. She experiences these things, and it doesn't faze her one bit. And I get that you can basically make the argument that people like can turn off and shift into stuff and do all these things, but I just don't understand why they would make a big deal showing how deeply it affects her and then not show the audience how deeply it affects her when it happens in real time. Like she's just like and then moves on, moves on, like just it's just like that. She moves right on. And I don't understand. Duncan, on the other hand, I will say that he does get concerned about like trying to find the kids and trying to find the family. Like he's really, I will say he does make commentary like that. The two groups are now separated and they keep their original integrity, which doesn't make sense to me. As it stands right now, we have Xavier, Teresa, Isabella, and Ruben all together. Like they're all fine. They get onto the island. After they crash onto the shore, you've got Krebs, Loomis, Duncan, and Zora. Those and Leclerc. Yes, Leclerc, who survived the crash as well and didn't get eaten by a dinosaur yet. And from the onset, when you really think about the backstory of the two characters that they focus the most on, which is Zora and Duncan, why did they do that? Like really think about it. How much more of a compelling like story, how much more of a compelling like setup and payoff would it have been to swap Ruben and Duncan? So you put Duncan with the kids, and you put Ruben with Zora and Krebs and everybody else. And the reason why that would have been such a compelling, like conflict kind of thing, is because now you have Duncan in a position where he feels like he has to protect these children, and you get to see that anxiety, you get to see those things, and not only that, a position for him to like walk through that with them and be able to explain those things, which again would have made a lot more sense given how strongly the story portrays him in on the boat to care about kids. The other benefit of that too is that at the very end, spoilers, Duncan like sacrifice, I have to use air quotes here, sacrifices himself to the D-Rex to save Isabella. However, it just feels like it came out of nowhere. It's just like, oh, right, this guy likes kids. Like, this guy, I mean, ooh, that phrasing. Anyways, this guy is like using this child as a substitute for the child that he couldn't save who died. And they don't really explain how the child died, but like as a substitute for his own child that he couldn't save. So he's trying to save Isabella. When at the end of the movie he does that sacrifice, and it's not really a sacrifice because he comes back in miraculously, not sure how, they don't ever explain that, it doesn't feel warranted or earned. Likewise, if you have Ruben in the group with Zora, not only are you putting a mess ton of conflict in that area, what you are doing is you're causing Zora to now worry consistently about someone that she genuinely cares about and has known for a long time, which is going to trigger that PTS response and then help her have to push past that growth, help her have to push past those anxieties and fears, because she has to focus on getting people out. She has to focus on those things instead of trying to save Duncan, which is what she feels like she'll want to do, at least in my opinion in the story, because she couldn't save her partner before. Other added benefit of adding Ruben to the group with the mercenaries is that it avoids one really weird scene that happens in the movie between Zora and Krebs. That scene being Zora, for whatever reason, is questioning Krebs on why Teresa fell. Even though no one saw that happen, no one knew that they were in the same like area together that I'm aware of, because everybody else was outside of the boat and it was just Krebs and Teresa. The movie goes out of its way to really like have Zora's character just like really question Krebs and be like, well, if I find out it's any other way, then that's gonna be end of you. And it's like, that, why? Why? At the very least, if you're going to keep the integrity of the two groups, the person who should have been asking about Teresa should have been Duncan, who was in that group, and he was just quiet the entire time, did not talk to Krebs about it or anything like that. And so having her question him was really weird, and it didn't make sense, and it, again, felt like something that was unwarranted and undeserved. It was something that just came out of nowhere. It was a setup that had no setup, and so it thus didn't pay off. Some of the other benefits of having Duncan in the group with the Gato kids and Xavier, and Ruben in the group with the mercenaries, is that you are not looking to Loomis to carry this role of being the heart of the story, because again, it didn't make sense, because it's just like what you see is what you get with him, and it doesn't, like, it's not earned. It's just like, this guy really likes dinosaurs. Okay. Well, Alan Grant really liked dinosaurs, but he had wonder and awe when it came to dinosaurs, and also a healthy dose of fear, because, yeah. But with Ruben in the group with the mercenaries, now you have someone who doesn't like have any sort of training, who doesn't have anything like that, who just knows like general, like built the boat, knows how to do all of those things, but he's going to be worrying about his kids. He's going to be consistently like asking questions about, how do we know? Like, what are we going to do? We need to go get my kids, which is going to align with Zora's like motivations of a character to also find Duncan, who was with the kids, which then would put Krebs in conflict with them, and a little bit of Loomis in conflict with them, because Loomis wants to see the dinosaurs, he's the expert, but Krebs, his motivation is to get all this DNA. There's no conflict really in this movie at all. It's really confusing on a character level. There's no conflict at all. And I feel like if they would have actually like done it this way, I probably could have looked past the fact that there really weren't a lot of mutated dinosaurs in this movie, and the fact that the setup for how everything shut down was really stupid because it was a Snickers bar. Like, I could have looked past all of those things and not have to like really think about it if they would have just made the characters compelling and interesting. Compelling and interesting being, the way that they set them up to be. Because even the dynamics of the Delgado family is really weird, because, and I say really weird because like, I get that Xavier's like an outsider and he's treated as such by Ruben, but they have like weird moments, and I don't know if it's due to editing choices or rewrites, where it's like, oh, Isabella's finally speaking, and it's like, when did we establish that she wasn't speaking at all? And so they made big deals about this, and they treated Isabella as if she was a child who was consistently and constantly afraid of everything, and she really wasn't. The other weird thing about all of this is the fact that it feels like they create this weird sense of manufactured conflict that isn't really conflict between Zora and Krebs. And it really does center around the fact of like, what happened to Teresa. And that just doesn't make sense, because again, it would have made a lot more sense if she would have seen Krebs not helping like Atwater or someone she actually knew. But Krebs throughout the entire movie has not been seen until the very end for whatever reason, using the world's most magically unjammable like pistol that anybody's ever seen to turn on everybody and be evil. It was just like, all right, this guy, like, he works for the company, he's got to be the bad guy. But like, you see him help people, you see him help save people, you see him like you do some shifty like faces, but like overall, he's not generally a evil person, it seems. It really baffles me that they decided to incorporate these really compelling, two interesting backstory things about two characters that seemed pretty interesting to watch, seems pretty interesting to like be on their side, and then literally do nothing until it's like, oh crap, we gotta do something with this because we said this thing. But like, all of it felt super unwarranted and felt super not cared about. And I really hate the fact that Duncan sacrifices himself at the end to the D-Rex, and the D-Rex is like as close as I am basically to his face, to this microphone, and he somehow magically lives and gets away. Like, that's really weird. I don't understand why they decided to do that, because that cheapened his sacrifice, and not only that, that cheapened his potential of a character arc. So what was the point of that? Actually, I do know what the point of that was. The point of that was to put Zora in a position to where she freaks out because she thinks Duncan's going to sacrifice himself. And I get it. But the thing is, she didn't show any sort of emotion for anybody dying at any point. And now she's like, do it, Duncan. And he's like, I gotta do it. And it's just like, why? He has no connection to these children. They didn't give him a reason to want to sacrifice other than the fact that, like, he's protective of kids, but he has no connection to these kids, so it doesn't make that earned. It doesn't make that warranted. Just like her lack of response to anybody else dying around her doesn't cause her to have a panic attack or anything like that. So this moment feels unwarranted. It baffles the mind, let me tell you. They really did a good job setting up characters to do things. They really had an amazing layup for setups, for good conflict, for good story stuff. And then at some point, I guess they were just like, nah, screw this. Like, I'm not gonna bother with this. This effing is not a part of what I want to do. We want to put dinosaurs on there. We want to have like figments of dinosaurs on there, and then we want to like try to like force like some family stuff in there too, like for the kids, and maybe have some like cool dinosaurs for toys. And for me, like it is. I know this video is like super rambly because I'm doing it off the top of my head because it's something I've really thought about. But for me, if they would have just taken the time to just trade out two characters, it would have introduced a world of conflict and compelling character movement that would have made some of the things that happened make sense. Because if, Ruben was in that group, Zora worries about the kid, about Duncan. Ruben worries about his kids, and then you get to have the conflict of like Ruben being like, "You were the last one to see my daughter. Can you tell me what happened?" And then he gets to question him instead of Zora doing it, which is really weird. Or if they would have just kept the original integrity of the group, like they did in the movie, have Duncan question Krebs, which would have made a lot more sense, and then have Zora actually react when people, you know, don't make it and get eaten by dinosaurs in front of you. Like, I don't understand. In the future, I'm probably going to try like really think these out a lot more. I've actually been thinking about this since the movie came out, and I've written a bunch of stuff. Like, scripting is new for me, and I've written a bunch of stuff, and I had a hard time like really communicating it in text. So I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do it off the cuff, even though I'm not wearing cuffs, and see how that goes. Not all my videos are gonna be like this. Anyways, I really want to start looking at media, start looking at like movies and TV shows and things like that, and see things that were set up that just effed off. Like, they just said, screw it, you're in the wind, and I don't care about this. We set this up, and we're not gonna worry about that. And I also kind of want to look up for like things that like setups that paid off really well. I don't have a really clever name for that yet. I'll get there. Maybe you can suggest one in the comments. I don't know. I'm just like doing this because I like talking about this stuff. So, if you think I got a plan, I don't have one. But anyways, if you found this interesting, please like let me know. If there were other stuff in the movie that you also thought was like set up that they didn't really pay off, I'm not even going to get into the fact that they set up that really cool like river like leech monster thing and did nothing with it. Like, why would you even show that? Like, I don't understand. And stop, we're not talking about the dinosaurs, we're not talking about the creature, we're talking about two things. If you have any other suggestions for movies that you would like me to watch and just like see, hey, this was something that was set up, or stories or shows that didn't pay off, and how could it have paid off better or would have been different, please let me know. I like to just goblin rant about things on the internet because I just think it's fun to talk about this stuff because I enjoy it and it brings me joy and happiness to talk about and ramble about things like this. With all that being said, I'm going to end my rant here. Ka-cha. That's the end rant sound. Ka-cha. And thank you for being here. Okay, bye.